Cutie. Take one.
Yay, so true.
Here we go.
Let's go.
Let's go, baby. Hi. Hi, IG fam. Ashley Elizabeth here, and I am going to be interviewing
Domé Moon.
Yeah, if you guys tuned in to the interview that she conducted with me about a month ago for the art of letting go, then you got a little snippet about my story of sobriety up until this point. What we also mentioned in the interview was that we were both going to be taking another level of sobriety. So we're going to talk about that today. Actually, but this time, she's in the hot seat. So, to get us started, Domé, did you want to share with us maybe a little bit about your journey up until this decision to go sober on October 13th?
Yeah, absolutely. It's been a long journey, a long time coming, and it's not a linear journey. For me, sobriety has been something that I've been moving towards since I was about 23, so about 12 years now. That I've come to this point of being completely 100% sober, and marijuana was definitely the hardest crutch to overcome because it's not as harmful on the surface. Like, it has medicinal uses, it can be helpful, and so it's really easy to make excuses. But when you know that you're using it as a crutch and not as a medicine and not as a support, then you know. And I feel really passionate about this subject because in our society, it's kind of believed that, if you're an addict, then it's genetic and it's something that you cope for the rest of your life, and you just have to constantly be monitoring yourself. And that hasn't been my experience. I started drinking, the first time I got drunk, I was by myself when I was 9. So it was also like nothing to do with peer pressure or anything like that. And I started drinking regularly by the time I was like 12 and 13. And then, in my late teens and early 20s, I was blacking out all the time. I was also using other drugs, but not as commonly. But alcohol was absolutely a big part of my life, and I thought that's what was gonna take my life. And any way to disassociate, I would partake in. And like, psychedelics have a medicinal use and a purpose in this world, but for me, it was a form of escapism. And so addiction, the way that I see it, is just an attempt to suppress the unreleased pain and unprocessed pain, in a way to like numb out of life and not face your reality and not be with the feelings that are coming through you. So I do feel like my journey to sobriety has been kind of unconventional, because it almost chose me to an extent. Because I constantly look back and I constantly try to think of where the road split. Where, like, I have a lot of friends, people that I was friends with in my early 20s that we used to party with, and they have several friends that have died in really tragic ways. And I constantly think of, like, why am I now living this life of, bliss and beauty and adventure and building my goals and my dreams, and how come those people didn't have the same turn of events? And I try to track it back, and at first I couldn't tell. I think a big part of it was that I completely allowed myself to do whatever I want, so there wasn't that back and forth fighting. Like, when I was getting fucked up, I was out and done, and there was nothing holding me back. But another thing that happened was I was at a music festival when I was about 21, and I dropped some acid, and I remember there was a pivotal point where I decided that I will always do what feels right rather than I think is right. Because I feel like our thoughts can fool us. Our thoughts come from previous generations, from people, from television, from our education, and feelings cannot fool you. Like, that the animal body comes from nature, it's connected to everything. And so this was, years prior to me actually starting to get sober, but I do believe that my entire life shifted then, because that's when I got out of a physically abusive relationship, and I met my new partner with whom I moved to Colorado. And Colorado, moving to the mountains is actually what set me off on starting sobriety, because I got out of the Chicago bar scene. I had, left all my friends behind, all the cues that would trigger drinking, and I also started to live in high elevation. So I would try to go out and I try to drink the way that I used to, and within just like a couple beers I would begin to start to feel sick. So it was like I couldn't keep up with my own drinking, and I wanted to, because I know I can't just have one or two beers. So it's like I want to keep drinking more, but I would get so sick and almost feel hungover long before I get the high, before I feel good. And so from there I kind of started to ease out of it bit by bit by bit, and then I quit smoking cigarettes and I started to heavily rely on weed. But yeah, the thing that I really want to contribute to the conversation, that it's not about going from 0 to 100. It's about harm reduction and slowly replacing those habits with healthier habits, and slowly creating environments to heal, to express your emotions, building support networks, building community, learning to have goals and dreams, and being with your feelings. And I mean, this is an extended introduction, but
No,
that is the beginning of my journey, and that is my background.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you said, there is no conventional journey to sobriety, right?
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's going to have their own story, and that's really what I want to highlight with the Sober Truths, is that there is no one size fits all for your journey to sobriety, right? There's no one path to get you to this state of intoxication, and there's no one path to get you out of this attachment to whatever substance it is that you're choosing. But I really want to circle back to what you were saying about, like, you were really trying to focus on the sense of feeling rather than thinking, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, how are these substances making me feel, or how do I wish to feel, whether with or without the substances? So I don't know, has that continued to be a theme, I guess, in terms of like what you've been utilizing to carry on your sobriety journey?
Well, I believe that because of that decision, my life has played out in so many ways that they might not be very directly. It wasn't even like, oh, do I feel like drinking the substance or whatever, because it usually be yes. It's like, if I need to numb, I'm gonna do that. So it wasn't like very direct, but it was in other things, like ending that abusive relationship. Like, there was no way I was gonna get out of it, but my body, like, mentally I was like, no, this is as good as it gets. I need this to be safe. This is my life. But I broke out of that, and then next thing was dating my partner, who was a woman, and I didn't know that I was gay up until that point. So if I had listened to my mind, I never would have went for that relationship. But because I found myself in that relationship and I went with my feelings, then the love we had for each other, we healed each other in a lot of ways. Like, we went and traveled Europe, and that's why we moved to Colorado. It's like I never would have done any of those things by myself. But because I was following my heart and my feelings and just trusting the intelligence of my body much more than my conditioning and my fear and the voices in my head, then bit by bit by bit, my life unfolded in such miraculous ways. And the gifts that are being brought forward are slowly drawing you out of the dark cloud and out of your bad habits. And so for me, that's what I was saying. It's almost like the alcoholism, it almost like fell off of me. It's like alcohol quit me, even though like there's many times that I tried to quit, I wanted to quit, I hit rock bottom. But for me, it's like a day of not drinking was like having 3 drinks. I'm like, I stayed sober yesterday because I only had 3 drinks. Like, that's what I called it. So like, yeah. It did not seem attainable at all. But yeah, once you, instead of trying to get rid of the bad, you fill your days and your life with things that are more good and more inspiring. So for me, the big part was like being in the mountains and being in Colorado, and also getting into snowboarding. Like, that started to really build my confidence. It gave me a new activity, and just being surrounded by nature and feeling the love, the healing. So it was an accumulation of a lot of things, and meeting new types of people. But at the same time, there's big periods of it being extremely lonely because people do, like, drinking seems to be like the ultimate way to celebrate, and it's so deeply ingrained into our culture that for a while, like, I really had to, step away from that because it just lost its appeal. Like, I want to hang out with people, just want to hike and climb 14ers, and even other forms of like extremist sports like snowboarding, or even like cliff jumping. Like, that's not part of my journey, but I know that other people, like, they're still getting off on that adrenaline, and it may be a form of addiction, but it's much healthier than ingesting all these addictive substances.
Yeah.
Like, it's a lot less poisonous. And so by bit, like, again, going back to harm reduction, it's not about completely dropping it and then feeling such shame and guilt when you slip up one time or have a drink. It's like, that's not a big deal. It's about doing just a little bit better every single day.
Absolutely. So my background is in behavior modification, and what you're saying is that you were finding replacement behaviors, things that were going to fill you and feed you in a better way rather than in a harmful way. So that's a really beautiful strategy. Like you said, little by little there is a compound effect over a period of time, and then it gets to a point where you don't even think about it.
Right. And it was not even like an intentional thing. Like I said, it kind of almost happened naturally, because in high elevation I couldn't drink as much, and so sure, I started smoking more, but I would argue that it's far less harmful than alcohol. And also, when I was in the mountains, I was in a small mountain town, and I didn't really have many friends there, so I started making art again. Like, I'd always been an artist since I was a kid, but after high school I kind of didn't make time for that because I was either working or I was out partying. So like, that completely fell off, and it wasn't until I moved to the mountains and I started making art again, and then in a couple of years it became my full-time gig. So that never would have happened had I, remained in the city and didn't follow my natural impulses.
Absolutely, yeah. So I think what you're saying is one, you had a shift in environment, right, which also led to a shift in friend group, right? And then because maybe some of those friends didn't necessarily resonate anymore because you were in this path of sobriety, that you found your own community within yourself. You found it in your art, you found it in things that you're passionate about.
In nature, especially the forest.
We love nature.
Yeah.
So yeah, thank you for sharing all of that. And so this time around, we had taken a pact together, right, on October 13th, about a month ago, that we were going to level up again and take another step in our sobriety journey. So do you want to share a little bit about that?
Yes, absolutely. So like I said, marijuana has been a big crutch for me, although I am forever grateful for this medicine, because I don't think I would be here today had I not had access to that medicine. So I'm really grateful, but it lingered, it stayed on, it stayed with me for longer than I wanted to, and I knew because I would lose days, I would get groggy, I would cancel plans, I wasn't productive, and I was spending money I didn't have just to like feel normal, to feel okay. I'd make it happen. So like, that's a sign of addiction, where it's like, it's not just a healthy complementary part of your life. It's, I'm literally rearranging everything in my life just to be able to get it. And there's many years that I like tried to quit, and I had a lot of shame around it, and like I was like, I was able to quit other things like cigarettes and alcohol and cocaine even, and I was like, why is this so hard? And I started going to somatic therapy, and initially it helped a little bit, where I started to smoke slightly less frequently because I found new tools for expressing my emotions and being with what is in me, and having someone else witness me, and also reflecting back what I'm saying and telling me like which patterns are not healthy, because I was taking on a lot of weight and problems and guilt for things that I shouldn't have been carrying. So through that, it helped me a little bit, but then there came a point where my therapist was like, in a grand scheme of things, like, smoking weed is not such a bad thing. And I was like, I'm literally only paying you to help me with this, so I guess I'll figure this out on my own if we're not on the same page about that, which I understand her reasoning, because also when you are demonizing something and you're striving so hard to like destroy it and get rid of it, it's like it almost creates this tension and this pressure that creates like the whiplash effect, where it's like the more you try to resist, the more it like clings on to you. So it does have to come from a place of acceptance and love. And so eventually, through more somatic therapy, I've done a lot of like online courses and group therapy, and yoga is a really, really big part of my life, particularly Ashtanga yoga. And like I said, snowboarding, living in the mountains, having a relationship with my partner. I had 3 dogs that I cared for. Like, it was the culmination of all these things that just brought so much love into my life. And through slow, consistent practice, eventually, I eased out of smoking weed, and I had 1 year of complete sobriety, up until my dad's passing, because I was he very unexpectedly and without an explanation started to become paralyzed, and I took care of him. I was taking him to all the doctors. There was no answers, there was no support network. It was just seeing the dysfunctional medical system that we have, and the lack of cohesion and communication and care that's happening. Like, it was so traumatic on so many levels. But I actually remained sober through most of that, and it wasn't until like a week or 2 before his passing that I was like, you know what, I need something to to help me cope, because I was like losing sleep, grinding teeth. Like, it was just really brutal. So I started to smoke again, and I thought it was gonna be just like for a period of time. I thought I would be able to like ease out of it shortly after, because the grieving process after his passing, it actually brought a lot of relief, because I've dealt with a lot of death in the past, and so to me, just knowing that he's not suffering and that he's free and like this nightmare is over, like, that's so much easier to deal with than like living through it. So my grieving process was what I thought was complete and present, and like I felt like I was well equipped to actually live through that and deal with it and express it and actually weep and be with it. But for the next couple of years, I did start to drink socially here and there. I did continue to smoke almost daily, and even though I had the intention to quit, it just didn't seem to come naturally. It seemed to linger and almost pick up a little bit of momentum, where now I started to eat junk food again. I like smoked some vapes here and there, and I was like, wait a minute, I've left these things years and years behind, and now it feels like it's very slowly starting to creep in as this like dark cloud in my life. And I could tell like the quality of my thoughts was changing. My life was not the same. And so I realized, like, I have to take this seriously. I gotta snap out of it. Like, it's up to me to change this. I can't just let it slowly build momentum and become who I was again, in this self-destructive pattern. So yeah, I found a somatic therapist. I started working with another somatic therapist. I started to express my emotions, and I only had maybe like 8 or 10 sessions with her, and it helped tremendously. And last time I'd seen her, I was still smoking, but far less frequently, maybe like once a week. And coming to Costa Rica has also been, incredibly inspiring. Again, it's like hitting that next level of being surrounded by beauty and inspiration and miraculous moments, seeing new animals, new experiences. Like, you want to be present for it, you want to feel it. And so slowly increasing more beauty, and also going to a ton of ecstatic dances, sweating it out, having great conversations, crying, like meeting people that you love, having real connection. So things like that kind of brought me to a place where I felt like, you know what, I'm ready to quit. And even though I'd still be tempted, especially if like people are in front of me and I want to bond, I want to socialize, that's my ritual, that's what brings us together. So that was still a little tricky and a little hard, but again, I knew that I have abused this medicine and I want to have a healthy relationship, and just because other people may be having a healthy relationship, that's not me. And also I felt like, my lungs were super phlegmy, Like I could tell that it was taking a toll on my health and my mental clarity. Like my memory was shot, the brain fog was really bad. So I just knew it was time. And then you brought this up that you were considering, quitting or taking a break, and you wanted to do this. And I was like, it's been on my mind too. I was like, I felt like I want to take a sobriety oath and a celibacy oath for a period of time just to get clarity, because I felt like I was starting to lose myself. Like I wasn't the same person that I remember that I could be, that I know I can be. And so when you said that, there was just this, like, the light bulb went off where I was like, oh my God, if we do this together, then we have the support network and we can depend on each other, we can check in with each other. And that really brought me a lot of joy and a lot of inspiration. And so we created the ritual under, was it the full moon?
We did.
Well, it was the full moon right before the solar eclipse too, right? And we did this ritual, and I took an oath, speaking to myself, but also to my ancestors, to God. And I declared that I claim sovereignty and I'm ready to give up this pattern, and that I am done with this medicine. And I said 1 year of complete 100% sobriety. And as I spoke those words, I literally felt something leaving my energy body. Like this weight was like lifted off of me, and I've never experienced this. Like it felt like super powerful energy healing experience, which I was claiming for myself. I was speaking it, I was doing it, but I literally felt like I knew from this point forward, it's not gonna tempt me as much, it's not gonna be as hard. As long as I keep deciding that this is what I want, there's not gonna be that internal demon back and forth pole dance. And so ever since that, I've had many opportunities to smoke. And actually the first time that it came to me was in a fire ceremony, in a ritual. We were chanting and praying, and ganja was one of the offerings, and they were passing around. And I was like, in my entire life, never have I been presented with an opportunity to smoke weed in such a ceremonial, honorable way. And of course, this time that I had given up for, like, it was a week later that it shows up in my life. But I also kind of knew it was like this internal giggle of like, oh yeah, this is presenting for me to not smoke, to further go into my sovereignty and to claim that. And that night I actually had an incredibly, incredibly powerful experience, what I can only imagine ayahuasca is like. Because we chanted for 2 hours, and during the last mantra, I could literally feel my third eye like vibrating. And then afterwards, I was offered some rapé, and I've used this medicine before here and there sporadically, but I said yes. And right when I did the rapé, I was just like, I went into outer space. I became the entire cosmos. And then I was almost like afraid to be there. Like I was afraid of losing myself, because I was like, what happens if I pass out right now? I think I'm losing my body. So I slightly opened my eyes, and I'm like, okay, I'm still here, I'm still grounded. And I closed my eyes again, and I went back to outer space, and I could still see everyone around me with my eyes closed, and almost brighter than I could with my eyes open. So it was like, I was still very aware of everyone around me. I could see everything. I could hear the creek and feel the jungle. And I felt like the power of the entire universe in a single point of consciousness. And like the feeling that came up, it was almost like fear and intimidation, but really not in a bad way. It was just kind of like this sheer reverence of like, whoa, the true power that it is to be one point of consciousness of the entire universe in a single point. And that moment left me so grounded, so still, so confident. Like I will never forget that embodied experience, because words completely lack anything that I'm trying to describe. It can only be experienced. And I'm not saying that everyone's going to access that through the same way, but all of my spiritual experiences have been when I am sober. Like I said, I've used psychedelics, and I definitely feel like it's been a big part of my life. Oh, actually, this is a big part of the story, because psilocybin was also a big part of what helped me get off of weed the first time. Long before I went to therapy, I was so tired of this pattern, and I sat with mushrooms. I did like the regular dose of 3.5 grams, which I'm super sensitive. So to me, even like 1 gram makes me trip. So like 3.5 grams was a lot to me. But I asked the mushrooms to please help me end my marijuana addiction. And what happened was I was seeing a lot of visuals, and it was almost like, I don't know from what culture, but it was like South American patterns, like a Shipibo pattern. And I was reading it like music notes. And what it told me was that I was being really unkind to myself by giving too much of myself, which later I learned the term codependency, as in being a people pleaser and always feeling like it's my job to give everyone and solve everyone's problems. And I particularly saw that in my romantic relationship, where I just like, I sacrificed everything, like all my things are your things, all my time is your time, like I can be interrupted, like just basically completely 100% giving myself to that other person. But then I later also found out how I was like that with my friends, how I was like that in my business, with my clients, how I was like that in every single relationship in my life. I was just like giving too much of myself. So seemingly that appears as if it has nothing to do with marijuana addiction, but because I like saw how unloving and unkind that was, I started to set boundaries. I started to create those patterns. I started to end certain friendships. I started to establish some boundaries, and it actually felt like I was hurting someone. When I was like, I cannot be your therapist, please stop emotionally dumping on me, I'll give you contact of my therapist, and people would still like insist and insist and insist, and cutting them off literally felt as if I was being the most evil person in the world. But I did that because I love me and I needed to stand up for myself. And it was about 6 months after that journey that I was able to quit weed the first time around. So that was a really important step in that journey.
Yeah, absolutely. And kind of like circling back to what you were saying earlier about how it's not linear, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like this journey is not linear. It's not something that, if you're not successful the first time, doesn't mean that you can't revisit it,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like we're going through these grieving cycles always, like with substance or with a loved one or with relationships,
Mm-hmm.
like there are a lot of things that are going to bring us back to maybe point A or point B or even D, but like knowing that like you can revisit this intention,
Mm-hmm.
this intention of I'm choosing me,
Mm-hmm.
right? I'm choosing me. This decision is solely about me. It has nothing to do with anybody else, but
Right.
what is most important to me, what makes me feel good,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that's what I'm really hearing is what was bringing you back every single time was this decision to choose me.
Yes.
How is it going to make me feel?
Choose me and choose life and
Yeah.
choose joy. And I think the really important thing that I want to highlight is that we take substances to run away from certain feelings because we think if we open it up and start to feel it, it will never end. Like feeling grief and seeing how much more there is and how deep it goes and how much more anger and rage and grief and sadness and fear, it just snowballs and terrifies you, so you just want to shove it back down. But really, the more you feel your negative emotions, quote unquote negative emotions, because all emotions are good because it's so great to be alive and to experience anything, but the more that you allow yourself to feel the sad, the heavy, the quote unquote bad, the more heightened you are to the pleasures and the joys. And anytime that you suppress and numb and run away from your pain, you're also completely suppressing and numbing and running away from any true joy or pleasure.
Mm.
And so in a way, we use substances to give that artificial pleasure because it gives you that temporary high, but then you just come back down and then you feel that much worse because now there's that much more guilt and shame and less money and your house is a mess and everything else. So it's a temporary relief and it has its place, but long term it only causes more harm. And that's why it's important to not shame yourself, not guilt yourself, and simultaneously take other actions to create more safety and more resources and just a safe container to express. And if you know therapy is not accessible and kind, conscious people that want to hear you and love you aren't accessible to you, you can still just create your own safe zone. You know, in the corner of your room, you can put some blankets and make a playlist that makes you feel good, and you can go into that corner and you can cry, and like you can be resourced to yourself. And another thing is also like trees and plants, like finding a place in the park or in your yard where you can hug a tree and be with the flowers and tell them your problems and tell them what you've been through, and have them receive and hear you and feel you and be with them. Like all those things are here for us.
Right, absolutely. We're not alone.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah. So, you know, I have had a spiritual awakening, and Domé has had a spiritual awakening, and these are things that we'll talk about in the future. But yeah, just understanding that everything around us is conscious, right? Everything has a essence, essentially. And so even though you might not get a verbal reply from a tree or being out in Pachamama or Earth, then like knowing that like you are being held and that there is a collaboration that's taking place. So releasing these energies back to them and letting them support you, and knowing that you don't have to take this all on by yourself, right? So that's really beautiful. I love the idea of creating safe spaces in your home. I really want to kind of circle back around to like the rituals that you were creating, things that we were doing together, right? These essentially like initiations. You know, we're setting these intentions that we desire to, you know, change our behaviors, and how can we create a really beautiful ceremony essentially to encompass that, really to highlight, to make this pact with ourselves, and things like that.
So yeah, I think ritual and rites of passage, it's so necessary for healthy human existence. Like our bodies crave that. It's something that we perform for thousands of years in groups, and in modern day society we're losing that more and more and more, and it's being replaced with getting messed up and the Super Bowl and getting messed up on your birthday or the holidays,
which are all rituals
right.
in of themselves. They're just packaged very differently,
right?
But they all have very similar connotations,
right? But initially it would be, you know, chanting, dancing around a fire and weeping together, or initiating someone into adulthood or motherhood. You know, like all these thresholds would have a marking point and be witnessed by others and be claimed, and there's such a lack for it, and we are paying the price for it, we are longing for it. So I think it's really important to create your own rituals from day to day, within the year, but also when you're trying to step out of an old pattern and into a new pattern, from one identity to a new identity. And so just the general framework that I learned from my friend Dane Thomas is what he calls the IVAR method, IVAR, which is intention. You set your intention, then vibration, you raise your vibration through either, you know, chanting, dancing, yoga, breath work, anything that works for you, what feels good for you, making an altar. And then you take an action, which for us, I know we burned some bay leaves, we spoke our intentions into the words, we pulled some cards. It could be, you know, like a cord cutting, or burying something, or giving something to the ocean, lighting things on fire, any kind of an action to symbolize like this moment. And then the final point is release. You let go, you surrender it. So you're not constantly caught up, you're not thinking about like, oh, I need to keep doing this, I need to keep working. You just like surrender to the divine. You let go, you close out, you put away your things, and like it's done. There's this spaciousness and cleanliness. So that's like the very general framework for creating your own rituals.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Yeah, absolutely. Is there any, so you've been here in Costa Rica now for a couple of months, spending quality time with me, but you'll be heading back to the States, back to your home. And so I kind of want to hear, have you thought about what strategies or things you're going to maybe implement to make sure that you're continuing on with this, this in dedication to yourself and your sobriety journey with like marijuana and things like that?
Yeah, well, for me, my daily Ashtanga practice is really important because I'm a completely different person on the days that I practice. And again, it's not in a way that I'm so attached. There's plenty of times when I'm flexible, but I know that when I'm, struggling, having a consistent practice definitely keeps me in a much better place where I can make conscious choices rather than behave out of my impulses. And then another thing is I'm going to go visit my boyfriend for a couple weeks, and I asked him to be supportive and not to use around me, not to smoke or drink, and he was in total agreement with that. So, setting those boundaries and letting people know, because generally, like when I'm around friends, I know that I'm not as tempted because I have already been by weed and alcohol, and haven't felt tempted at all. But with a person that I actually really want to bond and connect with, that temptation can be that much stronger. So that's why I am, taking action ahead of time to make sure that I'm setting myself up for success. And then other than that, when I'm going home, I am a little bit worried about, facing the space where I last was and my previous relationship ended, and before that, that's where I was taking care of my dad. So I do know that a lot of that pain is gonna surface, and I do intend to keep in touch with my friends, but I also I'm anticipating that pain is gonna come, and I feel ready and resourced and strong to feel it. So I'm going there with an intention of feeling grief, feeling sadness, creating safe environments, and in a way I've been using a little bit of food to help me numb. Like, I don't feel guilty if I am eating junk food or sugar or chips, because I know I'm replacing this addiction that has been far more harmful to me, and I can allow myself to maybe scroll on social media or watch a funny dumb movie or eat food, and it's like these things I don't need to feel guilty about, because I know like they're helping me self-soothe, and I do have plenty of tools, and if I need to, I'm going to reach out to my therapist again. But I feel very well resourced to go into this and to feel those feelings and not be afraid of them and not feel like I need to run from it.
Yeah, beautiful. So I love what you were saying is setting yourself up for success, right? You've been on this journey for quite some time, and you've been accumulating different tools to put in your toolbox that you can rely back on. Yeah, so communicating with those who are in your immediate circle, letting them know what it is that you're choosing to do, getting on the same page with them. I think again what you were saying also, like other strategies to help you soothe that are less harmful, right? And giving yourself grace, creating these safe spaces, but then also going back to the rituals, right? So you mentioned that you're going to be back to this home, right? That you had created with a former partner, and I know a lot more about the story than what is being shared, but you are not going back as the same woman that you were when you came here. And so I invite you to set a ritual for yourself, create a ceremony to really highlight, the work that you've done in this year that you've been gone, and to really sit, like you said, to feel the feelings, to set an intention, to raise your vibration, what are your action steps, and to release it, right? Like, so these rituals that we're encouraging are not just something that you do around sobriety, but it's something that you can do at any age and stage to really highlight and celebrate these rites of passages. They come in all different shapes and sizes, right? You mentioned motherhood and jobs or relationships or things like that. Even just getting out of bed. Honestly, you can create a really sacred ceremony about celebrating yourself.
Right, adorning yourself and stepping into the world, absolutely.
Absolutely, yeah, and just honoring where you are. And I love that, so thank you for sharing all of that.
Thanks for that suggestion. I think it's a great idea, and I definitely felt like chills throughout my body, so it feels very resonant, and I appreciate that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Is there anything else that maybe you want to share? Any other tools or strategies? You've kind of been on this journey for a little bit of time. I know that you had mentioned like the rituals setting yourself up for success. Is there anything else that may come to mind, or do you feel like you kind of covered everything?
Yeah, actually there is a tool that I would like to share, and this is a somatic practice, but essentially to me, sobriety is about being in the present and being with what is present, what is in your body, being conscious in your body, because for the most part, we are all living in our head, and I have been for the longest time. So anytime you can do this practice at any given time, but especially if you are triggered or you feel tempted to rely on a substance or go do something it's not in your best interest, just scan your body, like become conscious of your body, and you can go from top of your head to your neck, your chest, your arms, and begin to notice what's there. How does your body actually feel? And it could be like, jitters or tickles or tension or heaviness or even expansiveness. It could be lightness. And naming what is happening, naming to yourself out loud what is in your body, instead of being like, oh, I'm scared, I'm nervous. What does that feel like? Is it butterflies in your stomach? Is it a knot? Is it twisting? Is it going upwards? Is it big? Is it wide? If you begin to describe this to yourself, you can do it just in your head, but I highly recommend doing it out loud to yourself. Of like, I feel my knee is sore and it's weighing me down, and there's a knot in my stomach, and it's big and it's expanding and it's moving up to my throat. By voicing it, you almost create this separation. Like this magical thing happens in your brain where you stop identifying with that feeling, and it creates space, and then you can just observe it, and therefore it can move through you. And it might happen several times, but a lot of times what happens, it starts to dissipate or it moves somewhere else, and then you discover something else there. But this is a practice of really being with what is and allowing those things to express themselves. And to take it to the next level, also listening to the intuitive impulse, if it is to, maybe shake it out or yawn or growl or like do some movements or
Scream.
Punch a pillow or scream. Yeah, like all these things are releasing. So these are the ways that you are being with these emotions, and then you're allowing them to express, and you don't need to know where it comes from. You don't need to know if it's that conversation or from that bully or from whatever, but these things start to leave your body and you start to become lighter, and magically you start to make better decisions.
I love that. Yeah. So seeing the things that are taking place in your body as energies rather than identifications, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what you were saying earlier is like, not identifying as I am anxious,
Mm-hmm.
I am stressed, right? I don't know if you guys know this, are two of the most potent words
Mm-hmm.
that we can say, and anything that is said beyond that, right,
Mm-hmm.
is essentially a spell. So to release that association with these quote unquote emotions, and really tapping into the energy and the actual feeling that it brings into the body, and giving it space and an opportunity to be released.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. I actually will probably be using that coming up here. I've been screaming, hence why my voice is like this. But yeah, I love that. So thank you for sharing that. So I think another thing that I just wanted to highlight is like community,
Mm-hmm.
right? How has community really played a role in your journey? Whether it's backpedaling or supporting you, and kind of, just sharing a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so I feel like I have a lot of amazing community, but they're always spread out, they're far away. Like my biggest community back at home is my yoga sangha, and then my partner, and people come in here and there. Like I said, when I was working with a therapist, that's my community, that's someone that's a soundboard. And when I go to Denver, I go to festivals, I have friends from my art community where like we connect, but a lot of that is revolved around drugs, and not everyone is on the same path as I am. And so a lot of times that can be hard, and you really have to gauge your capacity to be around that and not be consumed by that. So for me, a lot of times that looks like, you know, leaving the party earlier. I'm the first one there and the first one to leave, and I'll bring, like, you know, my kombucha or some adaptogenic drink, so I still feel like I'm holding something and like dealing with the social anxiety and not relying on not feeling as tempted to drink or whatever. But community has been hard, and the only place that I'm really finding people that are sober is like ecstatic dance community. And I can't say that I've fully like felt really connected to that either. Like, I'll go to ecstatic dances here and there, but I'm having my own experience, I'm shaking it out. But like from what I know, like extended sober groups are there. But to me, my community, I'm kind of learning to accept that I have to make it where it is and what it is. And I appreciate my super deep friendships and super deep connections that I can drop into right away. And if it might not be so consistent, but we have these beautiful tools of social media and you know, doing regular check-ins with people from across the world. And sometimes that's not enough. Sometimes you really need yourself, but it's or someone here close to you. But all you can do is like be there for yourself. And to me, the quote that I keep using is like, what's in the way is the way. You know, if this is what's part of your path, this is the journey you've been given, then this is the path that you walk. And I do believe that I will find my community and live in close proximity with people that I love. But I'm calling that in, and if that is not what is meant for me now, that's okay too. Like, the solitude path was a big part of me getting sober. I don't think I would have come to the same realizations and would have had so much peace. And it's because I removed myself from society that I was able to like face my demons. I was forced to face my demons because we can distract ourselves with other people and friendships and busyness, and also we are less likely to challenge our preconceived identities and egos and question our own ideas when everyone in the group has the same hive mind. So like, if you're challenging yourself, you're now also challenging everyone. So it's that much harder to take on a new belief system and to become somebody new if you are constantly immersed in a community. So yes, community is important, and seek it out and appreciate it in whatever way it looks. Because for the longest time I was like, oh, I can only be by sober people. But I'm like, no, if people are choosing to, you know, numb themselves, like I still can have a relationship. It's just probably not going to be as deep and not as intimate, but that's okay too. Like, community doesn't mean that you are super best friends with everybody. You know, community means that you love people where they are no matter what.
Yeah, I love that. So one thing that you had mentioned was setting yourself up for success, right? Like, if you plan to go into some of these social situations where you may feel compelled to like partake, right? What can you bring with you that can suffice that need or that desire? But then, you know, if you're finding that those spaces are not necessarily supportive, right? Like you said, you're challenging people's belief systems. Mm-hmm. You're challenging a culture, mm-hmm. right? And so it may be a little bit challenging to be in these spaces because people are going to look at you and wonder why you're not drinking,
right?
And it might not be very supportive. Mm-hmm. So what you mentioned after that was basically isolation, right?
Yeah.
There is a point in your journey where you may have to isolate. Mm-hmm. I had to do that myself. But, you know, what you also mentioned was, even though you had gone through this isolation period, what came out on the other side? Can we talk about maybe some of the benefits of like going sober? And
absolutely.
Yeah, and some of the blessings that may be.
Absolutely. Well, like I said, a big part of it was me building an entire art career and finding a whole global community of artists that have similar philosophies to me, and like, that's really exciting. But things also happen kind of miraculously. Like, there was a time where I like really prayed for sisterhood, and next thing you know, I had an opportunity to go to this sister circle where all I had to cover was just like just basically my food. Like, it was very, very low cost. And I met so many sisters, and it was so beautiful and so deep, and we just, you know, shared such beautiful stories and prayers, and like, the connection was so magical and so deep, and like, it was only able to happen because I was open to it. So in a lot of ways, addiction keeps us away from fully experiencing life, and there's that fear. It's the unknown, and our mind's constantly protecting us from the unknown. So to be in a room with people that are actually conscious and aware and are not disassociated is extremely vulnerable, and it can be hard because you people are mirroring things to you that you were running from, you don't want to admit about yourself. And so, be patient and cautious and allow yourself to ease into that. But then the friendships and the relationships that come out of that are unbelievable, and it's so much deeper. And having few deep friendships is so much more valuable than having hundreds of shallow friends. And another thing is, like, I've been traveling both with going to different art events and workshops to study with some of the most amazing painters on earth, and experiencing synchronicities, hanging out with you. So adventure unfolds, whatever your path is. It doesn't mean maybe traveling isn't what you desire, but once you begin to live in tune with yourself and follow the intuition and follow the instincts of your heart, things become clearer, and all your relationships transform. The way that you relate to other people that are from your past that might not be as conscious or aware, in your family, because you are different, that relationship becomes different. You can still have beautiful, deep moments because now you have healthier boundaries. Now you know how to, navigate around certain topics. And so, yeah, the gift is the bliss of life. Seeing how alive and intelligent everything is, knowing how precious your time is, every moment is, being able to taste things and be present and eat slow and look at how colorful and beautiful things are. These are the things that we miss when we're disassociated and we're running and we're numbing. It's not there. So on the other side, it's a whole new world. And not to say that there aren't periods of darkness and sadness and despair and doubt. All that is still there, but that's part of the beauty of being human, that we get to experience both. It creates that contrast. The reason that I can experience my freedom and such beauty and such peace is because I know what it's like to be in such darkness and agony. I have that contrast, so I have such deeper appreciation for every single moment.
Absolutely. I think what you're highlighting too is the intention that you set, right? And always revisiting that intention, right? What did I choose? I was choosing me. I was choosing life. I was choosing these more high vibe, positive feelings, right? And what's associated with that, what's mirrored back to you, is love and high vibe experiences, right? So one thing that I really wanted to also highlight was when you had mentioned, now I just forgot. This is my first one. First one. So anyways, yeah, it's just the bliss that comes from these choices and setting these intentions. That was the other thing, just back to intentions yet again, right? So we don't only have to set intentions about wanting to make these healthier choices for ourselves with choosing the sobriety path, but also setting intentions about what kind of community you want to call into your life, what kind of life you want to call into your life, right? The intention doesn't just stop with the things that are negative that you wanted to decrease in your life, but you can also set intentions for things that you're calling in, things that you want to see in your life, and just trust and hold that vibe, right? Go back to your ritual, go back to your ritual, right? What are you trying to call in? Set the intention, raise your vibration, have some action steps, and really believe it, that you are worthy of it, so setting intentions are super, super, super powerful. Having these rituals are super, super powerful, but us getting clear about what is it that you want in your life, what do you want it to look like? Do you want it to be this spiral around, with the substances, dazed and confused all the time? Or do you want to set the intention that your life is going to be in a more, upward trajectory where you're striving for really beautiful blessings? So anyway, so I think we covered.
We covered a lot. I was just gonna say, the big piece of that is just knowing that different things are possible.
Yes.
Because for the longest time, I didn't think anything was possible, because we're told from a really early age that an addiction is a life sentence, and if you start, you're never going to be able to stop. And that is not true. Like, every single one of us have power over our situation, even if it doesn't feel like it, and it might not be as extreme or as powerful as you think, but in slow incremental changes. We don't have power over what happens to us. Like, we don't have choice over what happens to us, but we have choice over how we react to things and what we do with our experiences. So reclaiming that and knowing that by bit by bit by bit, your life can completely change and evolve. Because, like, I don't recognize myself. If me from 10 years ago was watching this, like, she wouldn't believe that that's the same person, you know. No way. Not even on the same planet. So yeah, just know that it's possible to change your circumstances.
Absolutely. Going back to the choice of choosing you, right? No matter at what cost, and really staying true to that feeling that you're desiring. So this is kind of the intention as to why I am starting the Sober Truth series, is so that way we can give an opportunity for those who are choosing the sober path to
Do you want me to go get it?
yes. I'm just gonna wrap up here because it sounds like somebody's at the door. The reason why I wish to start this Sober Truth series is to really give people an opportunity to share their journey, just to hold space, to, you know, give people an opportunity to just express their journey, their story, what it is that they've experienced, to maybe help somebody else who is on their sober journey or considering sobriety. I know personally, when I was choosing to go the sober route, that I had a friend who shared her story with me, and what it did was it made me not feel like I was isolated. It took a lot of the shame and the guilt away, and it gave me an opportunity to know that, like, I wasn't the only one out there, and you're not the only one out there. And that's what I really wish to highlight by interviewing those who are walking this path, is that you're not the only one out there. And so thank you to my beautiful sister here for being the first of many. I hope that I wish you so many blessings.
Thank you.
On your trip home. And I wish you all blessings wherever it is that you are in your journey. And just know that there's more to come, both in your journey and on this series. So with that being said, I think that's it.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I feel honored to be the first person, and I just feel so, like, it was so divinely aligned that we were brought together and we're both contemplating on, like, making this choice. And, you know, life provides, the universe provides when you make that decision for yourself.
Absolutely. We were both calling in sisterhood.
Yeah.
We were both calling in, these really beautiful blessings that I know and you know, and we wish to share with you guys that they're all possible for all of us. And so, thank you. I love you so much.
I love you. I'm so excited to see what this grows into, and I know that it'll ripple out and affect so many people, because it's so important to get this message out and to share the various journeys of how this path to better life can look like.
Absolutely. And it's not a one size fits all, right? We all came here as our own divine individuals to have our own unique experiences, and that's something else that I wish to highlight when we do the series, is for you to be able to get a sense of everybody's journey is completely different, but the story seems to be the same. So I want you to listen out for that. But anyways, I we'll be continuing this series moving forward. I will be interviewing others who have chosen the path of sobriety to really illustrate, just what it looks like and what could possibly be waiting on the other side. So tune in to the next Sober Truth interview in the coming days or the coming weeks. And if you wish to be interviewed, feel free to please reach out to me, slide in my DM. Just if you have any questions or wish for any kind of support in any way, if you are choosing this path or considering it, please feel free to reach out to us. In the meantime, Domé, where can people find you?
You can find me on all social medias, Domé Moon Art with underscores in between, and my website is domemoon.com.
Awesome.
Yeah, feel free to reach out for
She's an incredible artist.
Thank you.
She's an incredible artist. So I am Ashley Elizabeth, and this is Sober Truths.
Sober Truth.
Cut.
Oh, that's amazing.